Section 163 is about solving absolute value equations. So to go ahead and get started, it says to solve an equation involving absolute value, we have to remember that the expression inside our absolute value can be positive or negative. Okay. So because of that, that means we actually will have to create two separate equations. All right, so this review example is something you guys have done before in Algebra 1. So we have to create two cases or two equations. So the first equation is exactly the same, except we don't have our absolute value bars. The second equation, again, does not have absolute value bars, but we set what it's equal to the opposite of it. So since it was a positive 3, it now becomes a negative 3. If the original problem was negative 3, that would be a whole other issue. And now we just solve each of these equations. So I'm going to add 2 to both sides here. So 3 plus 2 is 5. Got our first answer. Here I'm going to add 2, and we get negative 1. We have our second answer. So for our new part, it's actually the same thing. Okay, except we now have a quadratic equation. So we are going to do x squared minus 3x equals negative 4x plus 6. So we leave the first one exactly the same. The second one, again, the left side is the same, but the right side we change the sign of everything. So instead of a minus 4x, it becomes a positive 4x, and instead of a plus 6, it becomes a minus 6. Now we're just going to go through and solve each of these equations. So it is quadratic, so I'm going to add 4x to both sides. So I get x squared. Negative 3x plus 4x is a positive 1x minus 6 equals 0. We're going to factor this. This factors into x plus 3 times x minus 2. Set each of these equal to 0. So x is going to equal negative 3, and x is going to equal positive 2. All right, for the second equation, again, we have to solve this one, so I'm going to subtract 4x from both sides. So in this case, I get x squared minus 7x, now plus 6 equals 0. This factors into x minus 6 times x minus 1. If we set each of them equal to 0 and solve, we get x is equal to 6 and x is equal to 1. So now we have 4 answers that we have to try. All right, we have to substitute them back in to ensure that they do actually work in the original equation. So first I'm going to do this with x equals negative 3. So I'm going, and remember we always substitute them back into the original. So negative 3 squared minus 3 times negative 3 equals, with a question mark, negative 4 times negative 3 plus 6. Okay, so here we are going to get, on the left-hand side, 18 equals 18. That checks out, that works. So x equals negative 3 is an answer. All right, the next one we're going to try is x equals 2. So I get 2 squared minus 3 times 2 equals negative 4 times 2 plus 6. I almost forgot my question mark. So in this case, we get a positive 2 is equal to a negative 2, which does not work. So I'm going to cross off my x equals 2. Now we're going to try 6. So absolute value, 6 squared minus 3 times 6 equals, with a question mark, negative 4 times 6 plus 6. We end up getting 18 on this side, negative 18 on the right side. They are not equal, so 6 does not work. All right, finally we have to try 1. Absolute value, 1 squared minus 3 times 1 equals, with a question mark, negative 4 times 1 plus 6. We end up getting 2 is equal to 2. There we go, and we got x is equal to 1. So our final answer is going to be x is equal to negative 3. Oops, sorry. And 1. I guess I don't need the comma. And that's our final answer. All right, so you can pause the video, take a second, try the 2 your turns. I'm just going to write only the solutions that work for both of these. Okay, moving on, we're going to sort of shift gears here a little bit, because remember this is section 1-6, which is all about solving different types of equations. So the next thing we're going to look at is different types of interest equations. And the one that we are going to spend probably the most amount of time on today is this one right here. Now you don't need to memorize this, I will give this to you. It is also given to you on the final exam, if we have this type of question on the final exam. All right, and everything that you need to know about each of those letters is on the right-hand side. So this is if we are compounding our interest. So A represents the balance in the account, usually afterwards, after we've done something to it. So typically our initial deposit plus whatever interest we've earned. P is our principal, which is our starting balance, how much we're originally depositing. R is our annual interest rate, and always remember to convert it to a decimal form. We do not want to put the percentage in there. N is the number of compoundings per year, and T is time, but we do have to remember that it is time in years, okay? The interest rate is also the annual interest rate, meaning yearly. All right, so let's take a look at our first example. It says, when you were born, your grandparents deposited $5,000 in a long-term investment in which the interest was compounded quarterly. So they gave us two things there. They gave us the original amount deposited, so that's our P, and they also said it was compounded quarterly. Quarterly is 4 times. Okay, today on your 25th birthday, the value of the investment was $25,062.59. What is the annual interest rate for this investment? All right, they also said your 25th birthday, so if it started when you were born, you are now 25, that is 25 years. So if we write our equation down, A equals P times the quantity 1 plus R over N to the NT, substitute in what we know. So A is $25,062.59. P is 5,000. 1 plus, now my interest rate, that's what we're not sure of. So that continues to be R. N, we said it's compounded 4 times because it's quarterly. N is also up there. Time is 25. All right, so now we just need to solve this. So we have 25062.59 equals 5,000 times 1 plus R over 4. 4 times 25 is 100. All right, so we need to get this R here by itself. So that means I need to get rid of my 5,000. So we end up with 5.012518. Now, obviously, you don't have to write out all of those decimals, but at least at the bare minimum due to, I would recommend at least 4. Okay, do not round it to a nice whole decimal or a nice whole number, or else this whole problem will be very far off, which is big for an interest rate problem. All right, and now we have an exponent of 100. Just like if I had an exponent of something that is squared, we do the opposite. So we are going to take the 100th root. So let me pull my calculator out here so that way you can see. So to do that, we hit the math button, number 5, and it automatically puts my little cursor right there. So I'm going to put 100 there. Use the right arrow to get underneath, and then 5.012518. Just make sure I did it right. Yes. And we get, I am going to round this to about 4 decimal places. So 1.0163, and then my 100th root and my 100th exponent cancel. Right, now we're going to subtract 1 from both sides. And now multiply both sides by 4. There we go. So we get 0.6500 is R, but if we went as an interest rate, I would move the decimal. Hang on, I forgot a 0. Okay, now that looks better. So now I would move the decimal 2 places, and that gives me our interest rate is 6.5%. All right, so again, you can pause the video, try this last your turn, and I will just write down the answer for you to check it.